Good morning, everybody, and welcome to TLC Live as every Wednesday. But today is a very, very special Wednesday because finally, Big O, Orlando Sanchez, is back in town. Welcome.
Unbelievable. Welcome everybody. So we've changed the format a little bit. We're going to go down to a 30-minute program, right? Rather than an entire hour, just to make it move along a little more quickly. And we want to discuss a couple of things today that are important. One, obviously, is the upcoming convention. And I want to explain the convention process for those of you that are not aware. And then we're going to have one of the candidates running for the SREC, which is the State Republican Executive Committee positions, and I'll talk a little bit about that happens. And then we have Michael Schofield, who is State Representative from House District 132 in West Houston, who's going to talk a little bit about sort of the early discussions about the tragic incident that took place in Uvalde, which is one of the latest incidences that's happened in Texas. I can think back to the Luby's cafeteria incident, I think way back in the 80s. And of course, these things continue to happen. And I don't know that government can cure an ill society, as I said last week. So, But anyway, to the convention. A lot of people know that, November is the big day to vote. Everybody gets excited about the presidential elections, but there's more to politics than just voting for a president every 4 years in November. And it seems like there's always political activity for those involved in this industry. We just finished the primaries in Harris County. Each party, both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, had primaries to choose candidates that they were going to put on the ballot in November. That's the primary process. And many of those were sent off into a runoff. So we just finished the runoff. Alexandra Mueller won the runoff for the position of Harris County judge against Vidal Martinez.
Yeah.
And then we now move into the state convention. Now, here's how this happens. And this is going to take a while to
And it's
explain.
going to be June 16 to 18.
Yeah, and so this is a little bit of an education class for you as well, so pay attention.
Good.
So in the primary process in March, you vote in your primary. You either vote in the Democrat or the Republican primary. Let's focus on the Republican process. After the polls close at 7 p.m., they have a precinct convention, and that is anyone that voted that day can attend the precinct convention. And the purpose of that is to introduce, for example, resolutions that you would like to see as a grassroots activist, as a voter, as a participant in the Republican primary. You can introduce resolutions that you would like to see in the state platform. And then from the state platform, because it goes to the national convention, most of the resolutions don't make it, but some do. That's how we come up with a platform in the Republican Party. Both parties have platforms. So these are the core issues that the party will stand for, defend, fight for. So at that evening at the precinct convention, you can also put your name into the hopper to become a delegate at your senatorial convention. So now all the precincts inside a senatorial district have a convention. And again, you have the rules committee, and then you have the resolutions committee, and you have the nominations committee, and they're going to nominate people or elect people to go to the state convention, which is coming up now in June. So if you made it to the precinct convention and you became a delegate to the senatorial district convention, and then you won as a delegate to the state convention, you're now going to be part of the committee that decides a lot of things for the Republican Party. And at the state convention, again, the same thing. You have the rules committee, you have the platform committee, you have the nominations committee, you have all of these activities going on, and the entire state gathers, and the entire state meets by senatorial districts. And in those senatorial districts, you have to elect a man and a woman to become part of the executive committee of the Republican Party of Texas. And so we have invited Leah Hagan this evening or this morning because she is one of the candidates running for the position of State Republican Executive Committee woman, okay? And so, Leah, are you with us?
Hey, yeah, I'm here.
How are you?
How's it going? I'm
Good.
doing well, just staying busy.
So, do you think I gave folks a fairly accurate picture of the process?
Yeah, I mean, that was a perfect brief rundown about, the state convention that happens every 2 years. I think that you pretty much hit that, head on the nail.
All right. So, you have decided to run to represent your senatorial district at the SREC, the State Republican Executive Committee. Now, first of all, I want to tell everybody that Leah was an early participant when we got started as a political action committee here in Texas several years ago. Leah was part of the leadership of the organization. And of course, she's moved on to do other things to help other candidates, to be involved in her community, to be involved in her precinct, to help elect many other candidates and raise money for them. But we're delighted that you have decided to run. Now, tell us, what is the process? In other words, what do you have to do? And by the way, your last name is Hagan, but you are Latina, correct?
Yes, I am Latina. My Hispanic side comes from my mom's side, hence the non-traditional Hispanic last name.
Right. So, so one of the things that we've always argued for here at Texas Latino Conservatives is the dire need of more Latino involvement in the grassroots of the Republican Party. So, for me anyway, it's significant that you have decided to put your name into the hopper to see if your delegates will elect you to the SREC. So, tell us a little bit about the process. What do you need to do so that those watching can understand how the process, how a young lady becomes a member of the State Republican Executive Committee?
Yeah, so obviously for those of the viewers out there who do not know, the state Republican Executive Committee oversees the platform, and they're there to uphold the platform and hold the state party accountable to that platform. And I've been involved since, gosh, 2010, and so it's been a long time. And here locally in Texas, I've been involved for about 7 years, and I've been to a lot of the local conventions, the precinct conventions, the senatorial conventions, as well as previous state conventions. So I've been able to see that process from the beginning to the end, and I've been able to experience, candidates getting elected to this committee. And so I really understand, from my understanding, or what I've personally done is I started from the beginning, and that was attending the local precinct convention and then the Senate conventions. And of course, I also served on the resolutions committee at the Senate convention. And so it kind of gave me an insight of what we deal with resolutions coming forward to the platform committee, and whether or not there are laws that are already made that are in that resolution that's presented. And if that's the case, then we've got to kind of shoot that down and let them know, hey, there's already this established. Maybe you can put a resolution to try and change, or add wording to that process. And if it's not a law already or a platform on the state Republican Party, then you will pass that resolution if we all agree with the wording and how it's presented. We pass that on to the state convention, and from Monday to Wednesday, you've got these subcommittees meeting up, reviewing those different resolutions that were passed on from the county conventions. And that consists of the precinct and the Senate conventions. And so once they review those are also then passed to the most busiest days, which are also attended on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And that's where a lot of your voting goes on. And one of those voting elections is for the Senate district SRECs. I'm running for District 18. And so basically, I'd have to be nominated on the floor by one of the delegates who are there. And I'm also a delegate because I have attended the previous conventions, the precinct and the Senate conventions. And so once I get nominated from the floor, then you'll get like a 3 to 5 minute spiel. But before all of that, during that time on Thursday and Friday, you really want to connect to those delegates, let them know what your platform and your vision is, what your experience is, and what you're willing to do and fight for them.
So essentially, it's a micro campaign. In other words, you're campaigning.
Yes.
You're going to be around the hall. You're going to be at the George R. Brown Convention Center. And by the way, these things are a lot of fun because there's like any convention, you have the general sessions, right? And these are statewide politicians, national leaders will come in and give speeches, and the chairman of the party gives a speech, and the vice chair, and then the lieutenant governor and the governor will come in and speak, and members of Congress. So that's a lot of fun to watch that in the general session. And then you break out back to your senatorial district conventions where you have your caucuses and you have your business, and that's where the nomination process that Leah mentioned takes place. But in the meantime, Leah's going to be working the floor, so to speak, not only in her senatorial district caucus convention, but she's also going to be in the main room where all the different interests are. For example, many candidates will have a booth. Maybe the NRA will have a booth. Texans for Lawsuit Reform will have a booth. Texas Latino Conservatives, the RNHA, HRT, Hispanic Republicans of Texas. You'll have the homeschoolers may have a booth at the convention, and they pass out literature and information about all these various interests in our society. You may have those that advocate for freedom of religion, to stop the government from preventing us from worshiping on Sundays in the event of a pandemic, as we've seen in the past. So that's a lot of fun. You get a lot of gifts. You get candy, and you get pens, and you get glasses, and you get bags, and it's like any other typical convention. So Leah's going to be working that room, looking for people with credentials from Senatorial District 18, and you're going to be campaigning. You're going to be talking to them. You're also going to be passing out literature, right?
Yeah, so I've got some printed material that it's going to be coming with me to the convention. And so I'll be handing those out like candy, really kind of hounding down on those delegates and really teaching them that give me a chance. I've got the experience. Here's my information. You can read all about what I've done in the community, what I've done statewide, and how I can really take a stand and uphold these values that we have as conservatives. And I'm willing to put in that fight and be that person who is their voice. And so I will be out there. Actually, I'll be out there starting Monday, and we'll be going to Saturday even after the election, just because, like you said, it's a really fun time. This is going to be a really fast-paced campaign. It's going to be minute by minute, and we're running every second of the way.
All right, look, so we normally don't get involved in that type of grassroots activity, but because Texas Latino Conservatives is committed to ensuring that more I hate the word diversity, but it's important to have diverse interests represented at our convention. And so the fact that you have sort of demonstrated your capabilities as an activist, as a grassroots worker, as a volunteer, as a staunch Republican, we have endorsed you. We're going to endorse you, and we're very proud of you. We're glad that you're running. We want to wish you the very best. And if there's anything that we can do to help you, let us know. We're behind you 100%. I think you're going to do extremely well. And we'll see you around the convention. By the way, any Republican, any conservative that wants to attend the convention may do so. You don't have to be a delegate. I don't know if the rules have changed, Leah, but in the past, you used to pay a fee and come in as a guest. Of course, you turn in your credentials, your identification, and they will issue you a guest pass to observe the general session and mill around at the convention and visit with all of the grassroots activists.
Yeah, of course. I mean, either you're a delegate, you're an alternate, or you're a guest. Delegates, not all of them show up, so that's where alternates get to come in and then use their voice and their vote to make a difference in their Senate district. And then also you can become a guest as well. I mean, I think it's about $70 to sign up through the state party's website. And all you have to do is show up with your ID, I believe, print out your credentials with your ticketing information, and go around the convention area, visit the different booths. I mean, there are people coming in from all over the U.S., a lot of elected officials, and a lot of cool organizations that a lot of us like.
Awesome. Okay, Leah, thank you. And let's move on to our next guest.
Very educational.
Did you learn something
about
this? But you know what? In my opinion, that this is probably the most important political process in this nation are the conventions and the grassroots activism that goes on between major elections. And a lot of people don't understand This is how party platforms are developed. These are how the rules are developed. These are how delegates become delegates and alternates become alternates. And eventually, this is and we will elect a state party chairman again. So anyway, our next guest is
somebody that we also support in the past
Yes,
when
we
he
have.
was running for Texas House of Representatives District 132, and he is Michael Schofield. Oh, what happened?
I don't know. He's not connected. Oh, okay.
Well,
We see him, but
he disconnected.
He disconnected. But anyway, maybe he'll jump back on. Michael Schofield used to work in the legal counsel office for former Governor Rick Perry. Has been very active in politics all the way back to probably the 1990s, as far as I can recall. Was very active in my campaign, and has always been a very close associate of mine. In other words, this is a person that I've relied on for a lot of my thought process when it comes to legislation, when it comes to ordinances. He is an attorney. He's well versed in statutes of the state of Texas, in the political process and public policy. Probably one of the most brilliant legal minds that I know in government. He's also a dear friend of mine. And is he back, or is he is
Yeah,
on? Okay,
we
great.
have Michael
So
back.
Michael is the state representative.
There we
for
go.
House District. Hey, good to see you, Michael.
I didn't go anywhere, Orlando. I don't know what happened.
Okay, well, that's okay. It's technology, and we're still trying to learn this process. But
Well, before we get started, Orlando, I want to congratulate you. A lot of people don't know this, but when the legislature this session finally passed a resolution creating an annual Tejano Day, it was Orlando Sanchez who was the driving force behind it. It was Orlando's idea. Orlando came to me and said, we need to do this. And I was surprised we didn't already have some sort of recognition. And so we passed it, not surprisingly, unanimously. After I took a good bit of ribbing, being called Miguel a lot on the front mic from a lot of my Hispanic colleagues who were kind of embarrassed that they hadn't thought of it first. So congratulations, and thank you for correcting an oversight that we should have fixed a long time ago.
Well, congratulations to you, because you did carry the resolution. You managed to get it through the House, and not only were you the main sponsor, but you managed to get a bipartisan clan to sign on to the resolution, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, it was a very interesting group of folks that you don't normally see all together on the same bill.
Exactly. So, in that sense, it was good. It was bipartisan. It was a resolution supported by both Democrats and Republicans. I think it was unanimously voted upon, both chambers. I don't recall. And of course, the governor signed it. So the resolution is in effect in Texas. And in fact, we celebrated our first Tejano Day in Texas, in the heart of Tejano, Texas, which is Bexar County and San Antonio, right after we had tremendous success electing John Lujan to House District 118. I'm sure you probably have some great things to say about your colleague John Lujan down there in South San Antonio. But, it was such a success, Michael, that even the governor showed up and had a wonderful afternoon in our Tough Tejano Awards ceremony in San Antonio. But listen, we're glad you're with us, and Andrea had the idea to invite you to talk about, obviously, the big issue right now in our state, and that is the violence that occurred in Uvalde County and down in South Texas, west of San Antonio. And I'm sure Andrea's got some questions for you, but, this is not as we say in Texas, Michael, this is not our first rodeo. We've been through this before. We've been through these tragic, sad, sick mass shootings all the way back to the 80s. And, whether it's a post office, or whether it's a Luby's cafeteria, or whether it's a school, or whether it's a Walmart in El Paso, can government do something? What's the discussion among your colleagues and in Austin, Texas?
Well, the first thing is we have a mental health issue that we have to deal with. You can have all the guns you want. Most of us have one, and it doesn't make us decide we're going to shoot up a school or a neighborhood. There's something going on in somebody's mind that we need to deal with. And it's, we're starting with sort of an emerging public health issue, not just in these issues, but also generally. regarding, we passed Senate Bill 10 2 sessions ago, trying to set up a network of higher education authorities to deal with it and try to do research and figure out what it is that we're seeing in our society that we didn't used to see. And, we've had guns in our society since we were founded, and you didn't see people going in and shooting up schools or neighborhoods or churches. So what's going on? What is the sense of isolation that is leading people to feel so alone that they're doing this? And a lot of it deals with some of the things that we've been dealing with for the last half a century, which is the breakup of the family, trying to convince people that the family unit is not the way to go and that they should really rely on the state instead of on relatives to raise children and educate them and everything else. And as a result of that, people are lonelier than ever. Every survey you see gets worse and worse in the number of people who consider themselves lonely, the number of adults who have literally zero friends, and will report that in a survey. And we're getting to the point where our society is no longer a cohesive unit of individual families, but is basically broken apart, which is what some people want. They want you to rely more on the state than on your family or your church or your neighborhood. And that has led to some really horrific mental health issues that we're all having to deal with.
Yeah. So, Michael, tell us what is going on, because I know today, as we speak, it's a hearing with all the families of the victims from Uvalde and also from Buffalo. What is going on at the state level right now, and what is the plan at the state level?
Well, our main focus right now is twofold. One is the mental health issues and trying to speed up an understanding of what is leading to these things and how you can identify who's likely to fall into this kind of trap long before they get there. The time to identify somebody with a mental health issue isn't the day they start driving over to the school. It's way ahead of time, and trying to figure out why people are getting into the situation they are. And the second is something we started working on 2 sessions ago, which is the hardening of the security in the schools. When I was a kid, basically anybody could walk into the school and did. And, I was talking to a friend the other day, and they were saying, when their older brother, who was no longer in school, came to give them their lunch, just walked into the school, found them in the classroom, and came in and handed it to them. And we're supposed to be in a situation today where that's not possible, where our children are protected. As somebody was telling me the other day, we protect everything we care about with guns except our children. Mm-hmm. And so we don't have very much of a police presence at the schools where most of the kids are during the day, which doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't need as many squad cars going up and down my residential street at 10:30 in the morning as I need them to be over at the elementary school. So that's an issue. Of course, every time that there's any kind of gun violence, the first thing people say is, let's do away with everybody else's Second Amendment rights. And I can tell you, the last thing you want to do at this time, when government is proving unable to protect its citizens, is tell them they have to give up their guns. And to me, I point to 2 things. One, last night in San Francisco, of all places, the most liberal city on the planet Earth, the voters recalled the Soros-sponsored district attorney and threw him out of office because they were protecting the criminals and not the victims. Mm-hmm. And we are starting to see a concerted effort to do that on purpose here in Harris County, in Houston, where I am and where you are, by folks whose policy is that people shouldn't be in jail. It's reparations for past wrongs, that they shouldn't, no matter what they do. And since those people took office in 2018, we have had 174 people who have been murdered by someone who they intentionally let out without bail because they think bail is wrong and it's a terrible thing. 174 of our neighbors have lost their lives. That's 10 times more people than we've lost in Uvalde, and nobody's doing anything because that doesn't fit into the narrative of, hey, let's take everybody's guns away. We have got to protect our citizens. A government that doesn't protect its citizens isn't doing its very first priority. And if you're not doing your first priority, then what are you in business for?
Michael, I agree. I mean, this is about government power. The first thing that the left wants to do is take away our right to bear arms and protect ourselves as responsible citizens. Wrong. You know, they've been trying to do this for decades. It ain't going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
It's still their goal. Their goal is.
Oh, no, I know it is.
And you've heard Biden say it. Oh, forget
Yeah,
the
no.
Second Amendment. To which some
Yeah,
say,
no.
what about the other ones?
Yeah.
If you can forget the Second Amendment, can you forget the First Amendment?
Right. No,
You
forget
know,
them all. Yeah. No, that's right.
And
Forget them all.
that's a real issue. The second problem is the law-abiding people who will follow the law are the only ones you could possibly keep from getting guns. Criminals will get them. We've banned drugs. Fentanyl is illegal, and yet we're losing people literally every day to overdoses.
Left and right.
Your answer is not to let's make a law getting rid of your constitutional right. Your answer is let's go to the crux of the problem.
Now, here's the problem, in my opinion, and this is where you guys in Austin have to be very careful. This is very difficult to write legislation to address the mental health issue. It's as difficult as creating departments of Children's Protective Services. Children's Protective Services has a spotty record. Yes, they have some good successes, but a lot of times it can be weaponized against a parent who may be at a mall and, you know, the parent's choice is to whack the kid on the bottom for misbehaving. Nowadays, anybody can turn you into CPS.
Yeah.
CPS comes in and investigates you for months. You've got to hire a lawyer. You've got to go through the mental health system. And again, it gives government power. And in cases where, you know, people look at a child that's unfortunately, tragically died because of abuse, CPS was nowhere around. Obviously, no one reported it to the government. So your job is going to be tough. I don't know how you guys are going to write legislation that, you know, I can pick up the phone tomorrow and say, I think my friend Andrea is crazy. I think she's crazy. I think she's going to go postal. You know, how do we prevent that?
Well, the first thing is, it's always hard for politicians to avoid the temptation to do something. I can't tell you how many people say, you got to do something. That's the worst thing you can do. It's easy for a politician to go, I can get myself out of this mess by passing something that makes the voters think I've addressed it, and then nothing happens. Correct. And that's not just with this issue, so that's with all of them. You know, we supposedly passed a lot of bills to deal with flooding that had nothing to do with whether my neighborhood gets flooded. The second thing is, historically, because there's been a very poor understanding of mental health, it's been very subjective. So in Russia, for example, everybody who was diagnosed with a mental health disorder was somebody who disagreed with the government.
Exactly.
It was sort of the opposite. If you disagree with the government, you were determined to be insane and they would lock you up.
By the way, they do that. They do that in Cuba. They do that in Cuba. If you're gay, they lock you up and try to re-educate you. If you're against the government, you're insane and you go to Matanzas or, you know, some hospital somewhere. So you're right. So
we can't have that. But even yesterday, I read an article, as the science gets better, and I forget the portion of the brain it is because, quite frankly, I skipped as much biology as they would let me skip. But there is a portion of the brain that is 10% larger in schizophrenics, and over time you'll start to develop actual physical, quantifiable criteria that you can use to determine, as opposed to, oh, this guy voted for Trump, so he's insane, we're going to lock him up or shut him up, or all the things that the government's trying to do today. Over the course of time, as we get better with an actual physical understanding of the brain as an organ, you can help to figure some of these things out. Yes, what you can't do is just say, oh, I think so-and-so is insane. He's been against the vaccine, and so he must be crazy, and so he has fewer rights, or we're going to lock him up, or we're not going to let him defend himself, or whatever it is. But we're also at the very early stages of the understanding of mental health, and that is something that, irrespective of this particular issue, is going to grow over the course of time as we start to figure out how the brain works and how you can avoid some of. And it's not just this. We're talking about domestic violence. We're talking about all kinds of issues that, if you can determine a propensity to do them ahead of time, you can cut it off at the pass, which is the real goal. The real goal, other than, from some of our progressive friends on the left, is not to take away everybody's guns. It's to stop somebody from having the impulse to go downtown and shoot everybody.
Yeah, we're out of time, but I just returned from Montana, and I love to hike the wilderness and the national forest, Michael. No one goes into the forests, especially after the winter, without bear spray. And I often wondered, bear spray projects a toxic, pepper into the face of a bear at 45 feet. Why can't teachers be given bear spray? It completely disables somebody. I mean, you don't have to answer that now, but think about it. If every teacher had a bear spray can and could just spray somebody that assaults the children, they would disable them completely. I mean, if you disable a bear, you could disable a shooter. But anyway, we're out of time. We're going to have you back because we want you to keep us updated on any progression of legislation regarding mental health in the state of Texas. Thank you. Congratulations for the great job that you've done, and best of luck in November. We're going to be behind you again, and we look forward to you being the state representative for House District 132 in West Houston.
Michael, thank you so
Always
much for
good
your
to see you.
time.
Thank you much. Thanks for having me.
All right, bye-bye.
And I will add something before we go off the air. We need to rescue our values. We need to go back to basics. We need to go and pay more attention to our families. And this is what, this is going crazy. People are totally disconnected.
But government can't do that.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's us.
Yeah.
It's us as our society. It's us as a parents. We need to pay attention to our kids. We cannot keep giving them iPads and iPhones and pretend that that's okay, because it's not okay.
But that's parents' choices. They choose to give a kid an iPad, go into the room, stay in your room all day, playing media
videos, and they're not
being
paying attention
influenced.
to their kids. Even when they go to eat outside of a restaurant,
Yep.
it's like you see all the kids and nobody is totally disconnection.
It's like I said last week on the show, Andrea. It is a sickness of mind, body, and
Yes.
soul in society.
Yeah.
And when you have, houses of worship being shut down and criticized by government and the left, when you have the family unit being destroyed, when you have insurance companies, lawyers, and government running the medical and the health industry, it's a disaster. And so you're right, we got to get back to the basics. Doctors have to make medical decisions. Parents have to make decisions, moral decisions for the family and how they want to inculcate those values. As Michael says, we've got to beef up the mental health funding for those that need help.
Yeah.
So it is an illness of mind, body, and soul in society that's causing this, because as I remind people, in the 20s and in the 30s, we had machine guns. People had machine guns. They'd go into Chicago, South Chicago, or New York, and the mob would literally machine gun each other down. I mean, and so government outlawed machine guns. Has that stopped the violence? No, this violence has started back in the 80s because, as Michael said, we didn't have that kind. We had machine guns, we had shotguns, we had all kinds of weapons in the 20s and 30s. People didn't go to schools and malls and shoot everything up. So it is a recent illness of society that needs to be addressed. I don't know that government will be successful. I think it's up to us as citizens, as parents, as ministers and churches.
We need to start working on ourselves and our
physicians.
families. That's what we need to.
All right, guys. Well, we're over our 30 minutes. We got to get used to being on our 30-minute program. But thank you for tuning in, and we will be back with you next week.
And visit us at TexasLatinoConservatives.com, TexasLatinoConservatives.com. Become a member and help us to our cause. See you guys next Wednesday. Nos vemos el próximo miércoles. Chao, chao.